Sure. At the last meeting, we went through the ordinance and looked at the locational standards, spacing standards, some of the provisions for hours of operation, the other operational requirements like the manager station, and so forth and so on. And after that discussion, the Township Board asked us to put together ordinances to address basically three subjects. One subject was an ordinance which would prohibit nudity in establishments that were licensed by the Michigan Liquor Control Commission. You have that in the form of one ordinance in front of you that I'll go through in a minute. The other was an ordinance that would provide for licensing separate from the zoning ordinance, in addition to the zoning ordinance provisions for sexually oriented businesses, both licensing for the establishment itself and also licensing for employees of the establishment. In addition, there was a suggestion that the hours of operation that currently may not be later than 2 a.m. Could be revisited, and for this purpose I put that into the licensing ordinance as part of the licensing ordinance. So you have two ordinances in front of you which address those three subjects. Now, if you turn first to the ordinance that I think you all have, entitled An Ordinance Prohibiting Nudity on Premises Subject to Licensing by the Michigan Liquor Control Commission. That starts off with some proposed findings of fact and some basis for this ordinance. What it recognizes is that under the 21st Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, that's the amendment that repealed prohibition, that granted rights to the states to control liquor and establishments that serve beer, wine, or alcoholic liquor. It includes findings to the effect that there have been some studies that show that the sale of liquor in conjunction with establishments that feature nudity can increase the risk of the so-called secondary effects, crime risks. There have been some studies that suggest that makes for more open targets for crime. And we've cited a couple cases in there, cases in which the courts have upheld an ordinance that prohibits nudity in establishments that are licensed by the Michigan Liquor Control Commission. Section 2 of the ordinance is then the prohibition. It prohibits any person, while appearing in a state of nudity, as defined, from frequenting, loitering, working, or performing in any established licensing or subject to licensing by the Michigan Liquor Control Commission. It then defines nudity as follows. The exposure to view of persons or any of the following body parts, directly or indirectly, including but not limited to exposures through see-through clothing articles or body stockings. The whole or any part of the pubic region, the whole or any part of the anus, the whole or any part of the buttocks, the whole or any part of the genitals, the female breast below a horizontal line across the top of the areola and extending across the width of the breast at that point, including the lower portion of the human female breast, but not including any portion of the cleavage of the human female breast exhibited by a bikini, dress, blouse, shirt, leotard, or similar wearing apparel, provided the areola is not exposed in whole or in part. Now, this provision of the ordinance comes from an ordinance that was adopted in Van Buren Township over in Wayne County and was involved in one of the court cases that have upheld the prohibition against nudity in licensed establishments. And it used essentially those same definitions of nudity. Now, something to recognize, this would not prohibit, for example, dancers dressed in bikinis. In Grand Rapids, for example, a number of the establishments have decided that they do not want to be defined as sexually oriented businesses, and so they have gone the route of having dancers in bikinis, as I understand it, so that they're not subject to the more strict provisions for sexually oriented businesses. That would be allowed under this ordinance. That would not be defined as a sexually oriented business, so that would be an option. The other option would be, if this ordinance were adopted, there could be semi-nude dancing, but not on the premises where it was subject to Michigan Liquor Control Commission approval. Section 3 then, in order to carry that out, is a direction to the Township Board not to approve the issuance or transfer of any MLCC license required for the sale or consumption of alcohol, or for licenses such as for dance, entertainment, or topless activity. Under the MLCC regulations, the township's approval by resolution is required for the transfer of an on-premises license. It's also required for issuance of a topless permit. The courts that have considered these ordinances like this have found that state law does permit the township to exercise its local option and adopt an ordinance like this. So this is something that is that has been approved by the courts. You've already been given materials by members of the public that suggest that there are secondary effects associated with the sale of alcohol in conjunction with nudity. You've also been submitted some materials from the General 131 group that question those findings and that indicate that there are controls imposed as part of a licensed establishment to ensure that there's responsible alcohol use, responsible alcohol management, and suggesting that such an atmosphere might be better controlled than one where nudity was allowed but alcohol was not. Now, this is not part of the zoning ordinance. This is a separate regulatory ordinance. The ordinance specifically provides that it will supersede the zoning ordinance in respect to sale of alcohol on the premises. If an ordinance like this were adopted, it would be our suggestion that the Planning Commission take the steps to change the zoning ordinance to make it consistent with this. This ordinance could be effective within 30 days after it's adopted and published. It does impose fines, misdemeanor fines for violation. It also allows the township to seek an injunction to stop nudity on a licensed premises. Does anyone have any questions about this? I could go ahead and go through the next ordinance. We can discuss them at once. We can discuss them in order however you would like to do it.
Any suggestions of continue, or you want to?
I'll go through the next one. The next ordinance is a licensing ordinance. It's based on the ordinance that was adopted by Marengo Township that some of the members of the public have urged the township consider. Mr. Berthold has urged the township consider. This differs somewhat from the zoning ordinance. The zoning ordinance provides for the initial approval process for establishments like this. The zoning ordinance does apply a separate procedure for revocation of the special use permit. However, more comprehensive licensing is not part of the zoning ordinance. So that's what this zoning ordinance, this licensing ordinance does. This is a type of ordinance that can be adopted and applied even to existing businesses. Okay, so from a timing standpoint, this is an ordinance that some communities have adopted and applied to businesses that have been operating for many years. It's a regulatory ordinance. There aren't vested rights that prevent it from applying to existing businesses. What it does is it establishes a requirement for a sexually oriented business license for the business itself. This draft ordinance also has a procedure for licensing of employees of that business, bartenders, entertainers, bouncers, what have you. And it's a very long ordinance, but just to try to distill it a little bit, it requires that the business itself apply for a license before they start operating. It requires that that license be renewed every year. Now, a lot of what's in this ordinance has come as a result of court suits where the adult entertainment industry and municipalities have battled back and forth. And so some of the requirements you see in here about speedy action on the application, the right to an internal review of any denials, the right to prompt court review, are there to satisfy the constitutional standards. And that takes up quite a bit of the ordinance. But the gist of the ordinance is that before the business begins operation, everyone who has an influential interest in the business, which is defined as a 10% or more ownership interest, or a director or officer of the business, must apply to the township for a permit. The important parts of that permit process is that, and this applies for employees as well, the applicant has to be 18 years of age or older and provide proof of age in the form of a driver's license, some sort of picture ID, so it can be verified that the owners and the employees are over 18 years of age. If it's found that false information is submitted in connection with an application, if someone's lied about the record or being involved in other businesses that have had problems, that's the basis for denying the permit, the license. One of the licensing requirements is that the owners of the business have not been involved in another business that has been subject to a court order finding that that business is a common law nuisance, or have not been subject to a lockdown order. So basically, they haven't been involved with another business of the same type that has been shut down by another municipality. The license also requires that the owners of an influential interest in the business, those 10% owners, directors, and so forth, and also employees not have been convicted of certain specified crimes. And you can look at the ordinance and see what those are. They are essentially crimes like prostitution, pandering, criminal sexual conduct, money laundering, tax evasion. Businesses like this dealing with a high amount of cash, and that's why those are in there. And certain other crimes that would disqualify the person from being eligible for a license. If the person or the business doesn't have any of those disqualifying factors, then they're entitled to receive a license. So as you can see, primarily the ordinance is a check of the age of the owners and the entertainers, the employees, a background check, a criminal background check, to verify whether these folks have been involved in any specified criminal activities, and a check into whether the owners of this business have owned other businesses that have been subject to shutdown orders or similar orders. Now, the application process to comply with the constitutional requirements of getting a speedy answer require that the township act on these applications within 20 days. In the case of a renewal of a license, and the license has to be renewed every year, when the application is made for a renewal of a license, there is a so-called temporary license granted, so there's no shutdown in the business, and then a final decision needs to be made on the application within 20 days. In the case of employees of the business, in order to deal with the practicalities of applying for a license for those folks, they are issued a temporary license at the time they turn in a complete application. And then again, the township has to act on that application within 20 days.
Okay. Anything else?
Just a few other things. The penalty or the sanction for a first violation of the ordinance is essentially a suspension for 30 days. In the case of a second suspension within a 1-year period, or in case certain more serious offenses were committed, such as prostitution, illegal drug sales on the premises, that would be grounds for revocation of the license for a period of 1 year. And again, there is a pretty detailed procedure in here for appealing such a determination, both at the township level, and a provision for getting to court in fairly short order to get a court review of the application. Another important part of this ordinance is that it prohibits transfer of a license. So in other words, if a business is sold, if a significant interest, if more than 10% of the business is sold, it's necessary to have a reapplication. And so the license can't be passed from owner to owner. If there's going to be a new owner of the business, they have to go through the licensing process themselves. Finally, we did include in here the provision to have the business closed by 12 midnight. One of the rationales sometimes used for that particular requirement is that it avoids having these types of businesses, where there's some evidence, at least claimed by some, that there are problems with mixing alcohol and nudity, with having those businesses closed at the same time as other bars. Of course, if if it's your decision not to allow liquor in these establishments, that's perhaps not as compelling a reason. You know, in addition, that was something that was looked at when the zoning ordinance was put together. There may have been some tweaks made in it at that time. And so I think take into account as you consider this whether that's an issue that you want to revisit at this point in time. This ordinance would require, I mean, you do need to take into account for the licensing ordinance the township resources it would take to enforce it. Probably the difficult part of enforcing this ordinance would be the provisions with respect to employees. To strictly enforce it would require fairly vigilant inspection of the property, especially for employees. An option that you may have, that you do have, is to decide to license the establishment but not license the employees. This ordinance has both of those provisions in it, but you could make a decision to adopt a revised ordinance that would not include the provisions for licensing employees. Now, the other issue that we have is right now we are under a moratorium, a suspension of consideration of special land use approval and site plan approval. These ordinances are really separate from the zoning ordinance. After going through the zoning ordinance provisions, these were the issues where there was a consensus to at least take a look at whether these were things that you wanted to address. And so, you know, of course, your discussion tonight, we may want to talk about whether it's advisable or necessary to keep that moratorium in place at this time. Again, these are separate ordinances. These are not part of the zoning ordinance. They can be adopted as regulatory ordinances by the Township Board without the need to go through the process of amending the zoning ordinance.
Okay. Do you have any input from the board or the planning commission?
I think it'd be in the interest of the planning commission to press ahead with their review, as we've already begun, in the event that the moratorium is lifted, and to continue the site review process.
Okay.
One thing I could add is the township has received the request for approval from the Liquor Control Commission for the transfer of the on-premises license and the topless entertainment license. And there's no deadline to act on that, and that's something that the township has not taken action on.
One question. Doesn't the Liquor Control Commission, don't they do background checks on these individuals that apply?
They do background checks as well.
Is it just on, is it all of the partners involved in the background checks? Just
Yes, the application lists all of the, I think they're stock, I think this is a corporation, so all the stockholders. I think there are 4 stockholders that own a 25% interest each.
Then that licensing is a little redundant.
Pardon me?
Then that the licensing regulation would be a little redundant then?
Liquor control looks at different things probably than what this ordinance looks at. But yeah, if it has a, if the decision is made to allow these establishments to be eligible for licenses, then there will be monitoring in connection with that.
But doesn't actually cover the employees in any way?
The employees themselves aren't licensed. They're required to go through training. But you know, the purpose of the sexually oriented business licensing is to look for people that have a criminal record of committing crimes that are associated with that sort of business, prostitution, you know, that sort of thing, specified crimes.
So then the establishment, the license just for the establishment itself doesn't cover all the employees?
If
That's just the establishment itself and looking at the owners?
It does look at the owners. It looks at, the licensing for the establishment looks at the backgrounds of everyone that owns a 10% or more interest in the establishment, and officers and directors. But it would not, that part of the ordinance doesn't reach employee onlys.
Right. And it's also renewed yearly and non-transferable license.
That's correct. And so the advantage of that would be that if the business is sold, there's a procedure there for the new operator to go through the background check and qualify. Which is not there for a, a zoning type of ordinance. In zoning ordinances, the permission runs with the land, not the owner.
Any other comments?
It seemed to me that a lot of this licensing, the stuff for that, put an awful lot of responsibility on the township clerk. I just
Or
wondered how-
supervisor,
What?
or supervisor.
Yeah, in here it says township clerk, but yes, it seems to put a lot of responsibility, a lot of work on them. I don't know if that's something that's,
And that forces the township clerk to police the place too.
yeah.
I'm afraid
I
to
don't
say
know if
it's
that's-
not gonna happen, I'm not walking in there. I can't.
Again, you do need the resources to enforce the ordinance. The provisions of that ordinance pertaining to employees are the ones that would require some pretty diligent enforcement and inspection. The provisions for the establishment itself probably not so much.
Which the cost for the township would be quite a chunk of cash, I would think.
I don't think we have the resources.
I don't think we do either.
Financially, I don't think we do.
The licensing fee wouldn't cover the cost
Speak
of.
into the mic louder, because I
So the
gotta tell
license-
everybody, you gotta really speak into the mic, because it's really hard to do the minutes and I can't hear you.
The licensing fee, you don't feel would cover the cost of enforcement?
No, the licensing fee is what, $100?
Yeah, the suggested fee was $100. Again, that was taken from a sample ordinance. That could be looked at, but it has to be a reasonable fee.
If it's something we are going to enforce, I cannot see making them pay for us to regulate it.
Well, that's a common feature of licensing ordinance.
I mean, for the $100, fine, but over and above that, to me, just seems ridiculous. If we're gonna, it's gonna cost the township $10,000 at least to.
Weekly visits,
Right.
weekly, more than once.
Oh, yeah. So, I don't think anyone's gonna wanna do that for free.
If they do violate it and find a violation, what is the repercussions with the township?
The clerk would issue a notice of either intent to suspend or an intent to revoke, depending on the circumstances. The applicant would then have a right to request an administrative hearing in front of the township. As written, to comply with the constitutional requirements, that requires the appointment of an independent hearing officer. This ordinance suggests that person be an attorney, not affiliated with the township. And it could be an administrative process. It could take up to a couple days and require a transcript be prepared. And so that's could be a fairly expensive procedure as well.
I guess I missed, I don't understand what you say by a weekly visit. I don't know what you meant by that.
Well, I think for the establishment itself, if the decision were made only to adopt this ordinance for licensing of an establishment, regular visits would probably not be as necessary. If the decision is made to adopt this ordinance for the employees, then in order to really effectively enforce it, it's going to be necessary to inspect the premises, to check the licenses of the employees on a fairly regular basis, because there's So would it need to be weekly, I don't know, but, you know, I think you can see how to really effectively enforce that, you would need to visit that premises fairly often.
Turnover of help and everything. It would be weekly, minimum weekly.
Any other comments? Any other comments? This is on the licensing. Does somebody, I would entertain a motion from council board. Would you like to do it or don't want to do it? If there's no more discussion, then we can make a decision.
It's not anything that has to be decided tonight on the ordinances, right?
Doesn't have to, but, I don't know what else we're gonna, we've had time, we've gotten several different opinions, we've got another reading the paper. I would think that we should be able to come up with a decision tonight. That's just my opinion. How many times we want to meet and go over the same material and get more material to go over and not make a decision. It's a board thing. My opinion on it, so but that is, I would think we need to move forward. I believe when we decided to pass the moratorium that it was to look into this stuff, which I believe we've done extensively. And we've read a lot on it. We've got several opinions and where we need to go or what we should do. And they're all various and different, depends on who it comes from. And I just personally think that at this time we should decide to either pass it or not pass it or whatever.
Excuse me, but
Yes.
it could also be passed as far as part of it, right? Like you could choose to just license the establishment, or you could license both, or you could do neither. Is that correct?
That's correct. And again, this is an ordinance that could be imposed on existing businesses, and typically, and very often is imposed on existing businesses. So unlike the decision with respect to liquor, this is one that could be imposed later if based on, you know, if this business comes to pass, this could be imposed later if there's determined to be a need for it.
So,
What about the moratorium?
well,
You wanna lift that first,
I think the moratorium should be lifted.
so we can proceed ahead here?
Yeah. That's,
I make a motion, we lift the moratorium, get on with this.
I have a motion, do I have support? I'll support it. Do we have further discussion? If we lift the moratorium, we still have two other proposals to vote on. This one here if we're going to afterwards. But I think we've had time enough to study and read and get, we've gotten several different, like I said, things sent to us. And we made sure you all had them ahead of time. I believe everybody's read it. What other comment? Yes, Jim.
Just a comment on the moratorium. The purpose of it is to allow for study of the ordinances, and you know, as Phil said, and there has been study. There was a joint meeting. There were a number of issues that were looked at, and it really narrowed down to the licensing and the alcohol. And so, if you know, if those are the two remaining issues, those are things that are not part of the zoning ordinance, and you you know, anytime there's a moratorium, it's necessary to move through this as promptly as possible, or the township could face legal action.
Have any other comments, any other input?
And it doesn't matter, I mean, what order you do things in?
I don't think the order matters. You know, the sense is that the licensing ordinance is something that is not, you know, not ready right now. You know, again, the liquor, that issue would, you know, come to a head when, or if this is approved, and the township needs to make a decision on whether to approve a liquor license or not. So yeah, I think you can go ahead and make a decision on the moratorium. There's no particular order this needs to go in.
But the ordinances could be voted on at a township meeting, correct? I mean, it's gonna be the township.
Yeah, the township board's gonna pass those.
Right.
I guess I'd like to know where else we're gonna get more information. We basically had 4 or 5 weeks to study all this. And I think, like I said, we should look into it, and we have. We've done what we said we were gonna do in moratorium. We formed a committee. The committee come to us, suggested we meet with the planning commission, which we have. This is our second meeting. And I think we need to at least make some headway here and decide one way or the other. We already have a motion, we have support for lifting the moratorium. Do I have more comments on the moratorium? If I have no more comments, we'll do the roll calls and lift the moratorium. Phil? Yes. Mary?
Yes.
Susan?
Yes.
John Boyd?
Yes.
John Johnson?
Yes.
Okay, let the record show that it passed. The moratorium has been lifted.
I have a question regarding this. So our next planning commission meeting, we can go back to review. Is that
Correct.
correct?
That's correct.
Which is next week.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay. Next, which part would you like to do next? The alcohol? Discuss that? Anybody?
I guess I'm unsure if you actually have to decide on these 2 ordinances tonight.
We don't have to. But I don't, what's the advantage of not voting on it tonight?
Ken?
I mean, I don't care, I just, it's again, it's the majority of the board, whatever you guys want to do. But I know that,
I think we have all the information that we need. I don't know if that's what you're questioning, Phil?
yeah,
I don't think anyone's questioning that we don't have enough information to consider.
I'm not happy with the way this ordinance is written.
What specifically?
Well, to monitor everything, is that the one we're talking about?
on the licensing requirement.
That's a licensing.
No.
He went back to the alcohol.
Oh. But isn't that part of this one?
The licensing ordinance was the one that we were speaking of when we were talking about the need to monitor and the resources required.
Would it be easier to go to that one first?
Well,
I guess I'm confused. I
If
thought
we-
one of them was,
There's 3.
if we want to make changes on the
2,
licensing,
excuse me.
that's what I thought too. But
then we'd have
the
to
liquor is under this
come
one.
up,
No.
No?
One is liquor, the other one is licensing.
The third topic was hours of operation. That's included in the licensing ordinance.
We're on alcohol. Is that where we're at?
So you're saying we're on alcohol?
Yeah,
So if we adopt a regulatory ordinance to have no alcohol, and I know, Jim, you were talking that, I mean, if we didn't approve the alcohol, the liquor license itself, based on what we have, that's one option also.
Yes, that's been upheld by the courts. You know, it has, at least in one case, been upheld as applied to an existing business even.
Okay.
It does, though, you know, represent a shift in policy from the ordinance that was adopted fairly recently.
and I know that March 1st Planning Commission meeting did discuss the possibility of no liquor. And we also, our original ordinance, our stated example of adult business regulations that we got January 28th had alcohol prohibited. Says open alcohol shall not be permitted in any sexual or business as defined in this ordinance except an adult cabaret license in compliance with the state liquor laws. And I believe it was discussed at that time, the majority of the planning commission and the board felt that it was an existing bar and it had been a bar. And that was why that was removed out of there. And it was revised, and that was taken out. So, I mean, it has been discussed several times before.
Of course, complying with state liquor requirements and restrictions.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
I think that regulates it better too. You know, like you said, it had been a bar in the past without a lot of problems. I think when these people apply, they are under the assumption that they would be able to have a chance to have the liquor license. When we started the hearing on the ordinance, that's where we were. And then we're kind of in the middle of the stream here, changing things, and that's gotta be pretty frustrating, kind of frustrating for me. So I think with the alcohol there, you've got better regulation of it, because you do have people that are looking over it. We've got people there that have been trained in how to handle people that are in a situation like that. I just think it's a better idea to leave it alone.
I have to agree, if only in the interest of fairness.
Well, and also, I know bartenders and owners have to go to state certified training. Johnny, I believe you were on the board at the Eagles.
Oh, yes, everybody, anybody, bartenders, waitresses, all that, they all have to go to school, be trained in alcohol, when somebody's had too much, how to shut them off, how to, you know, handle that. And that the state regulates that very heavily. And they make unannounced stops and trips. They'll do it at the Copper Top, the Eagles, they do it in Big Rapids, they just, anytime. And these, if you're in violation, yeah, they'll write up the waitress, bartender, whatever. And then if it's more than once, then they go after the guy that owns the license. And they'll jerk his license.
I know I'd rather them do that and be trained than have people going out in the parking lot drinking out of their cars or something. I don't know how that would work. I don't, you know, I'm sure it wouldn't be legal, but I don't know how they can control what people have done.
Go fair, how you control that too?
Sorry, we aren't open to public comment at this time. But,
I do, however, like how in this ordinance, it does state, and that's what the moratorium was for, to investigate further. It does state that there are studies to the effect that alcohol consumption impairs judgment, lowers inhibitions, thereby increasing the risk of adverse secondary effects such as crime, disorderly conduct, impaired driving, lewd behavior, and solicitation. It has been recognized and accepted by the Michigan and federal courts that the provision of alcohol coupled with nudity creates undesirable behavior, and that there is a rational basis for the prohibition of the combination of such activities in one establishment. So that does give us an out, I feel.
Anybody else have any comments?
To me, it comes down to weighing the odds between, alcohol outside of the establishment, other places in the community, and to having it there.
If a regular permit is not allowed, they still can get the takeout permit without township approval, correct?
Correct.
If this ordinance were adopted, it would prohibit nudity on an establishment that had takeout permit. Not that that's likely to happen, but it is written so that it would prohibit that.
Does it prohibit nudity if there's no alcohol?
Pardon me?
At one time, did you say that if there was no alcohol served, there could be complete nudity? Or is that
Not
just,
completely nude, but could be
but more so?
G-strings and pasties.
So if there's no alcohol, those restrictions wouldn't be as tight possibly? Or would the township have a?
We already have a nudity ordinance.
If this ordinance were adopted, it would not prohibit an unlicensed premises, a place that doesn't sell alcohol, from having nearly nude entertainment.
Thank you.
If this ordinance were adopted, it would not prohibit an establishment from having bikini dancers.
That was also something that
Pardon?
I said that was also something that we looked at, the rules between no alcohol
Right.
and alcohol.
So alcohol, more nudity,
Right.
I mean less nudity, no alcohol, more nudity.
That's state law, but we do have a nudity ordinance in place.
Can you explain the existing nudity ordinance that the township has, please, Jim?
It prohibits total nudity. It would allow pasties and G-strings.
And that nudity ordinance was placed into effect, to your knowledge, approximately when?
Oh,
Late
1996.
yeah, 15 or more years ago.
Okay. So, to make it blatantly clear, we have a nudity ordinance on the books that prevents total nudity, and it's been there for 15 years, right?
Right, and some establishments, I think back in the early days, were deciding not to have alcohol so they could have total nudity. And the Township Act was amended 15, 20 years ago to allow townships to prohibit total nudity, to avoid that.
But if they have the liquor license, they're still gonna have G-strings and pasties anyway, right?
If this ordinance were not adopted, then they could have a liquor license and they could be as nude as G-strings and pasties.
The way it stands right now, without adopting.
There is a
That's correct.
And if I adopt this, you're telling me that they can only go to G-strings and pasties.
No, if this were adopted, they could not wear G-strings and pasties if the establishment is licensed for alcohol.
Okay.
So, what Linda was saying, alcohol more, less nudity, no alcohol, more nudity.
How, if we already have a nudity
I
ordinance?
don't, well, there's a difference between G-strings and pasties and.
Yeah, so total nudity is not allowed.
No matter what.
Period, alcohol or alcohol.
Correct.
So doesn't that supersede anything else we do here?
But if you adopt this part of the nudity, you could only have, like you said, teen
with that, with alcohol.
Depends what you adopt.
You lost me, Jim.
Yeah.
Come back.
Okay. Total nudity is not allowed.
Right.
Total nudity means no nudity. Okay. Without adopting this, this liquor ordinance, if an establishment is approved as a sexually oriented business, the performers can be as nude as wearing G-strings and pasties. If you adopt this liquor ordinance, if the establishment is licensed, the performers may not perform as nearly nude as wearing pasties and G-strings. That would be prohibited. The performers could wear bikinis in a licensed establishment. Bikinis are things people wear on the beach. It's not something we could reach through an ordinance.
Technically, anyone can walk into a bar as long as they have shoes on with a bikini, can't they? I mean,
It would be a violation of the law.
I mean, you could probably go in that way to the top if you really wanted to. Yeah, I'm just saying.
I mean, if you pass this, then the only way that they could serve alcohol would be if they were in bikinis.
Correct. Or if they chose not to serve alcohol, they could perform nearly nude.
Okay.
It's 6 of one, half dozen of the other.
No.
So then if they did that, say they wanted to serve liquor, so they would have the girls wear bikinis. So then they'd no longer be a sexually oriented business.
That's correct. They would no longer be a sexually oriented business.
Kind of like the ones in Grand Rapids.
Yeah, I think that's not directly the result of the ordinance in Grand Rapids. That's, as I understand it, a business decision that the operators have made. In order to avoid all the requirements on sexually oriented businesses, they have just decided not to be sexually oriented businesses.
So you're actually saying that if we allowed alcohol sales, if they had a liquor license and they served alcohol, that the girls would have to wear at least bikinis?
If this ordinance were adopted, that would be correct.
If they wanted to have a liquor license.
But right now, the way things are, if nothing's adopted and they get a liquor license.
It falls back to our original nudity
Right,
ordinance.
so, right.
We're not totally nude.
They have a G-string.
Right.
So if they did not have a liquor license, they would have, it would fall back, like you said, on the nudity ordinance. So there would be no liquor, but there would be dancing with perhaps a little less clothing on. But then maybe you wouldn't have as many secondary effects if you weren't throwing liquor in there. Granted, they could be drinking out in the car, but hopefully the police would patrol that and, I don't know, maybe it wouldn't be as bad as what we think. I don't know, but at least it would be less alcohol than if we okayed it and passed, let them have a liquor license.
Anybody else? Any other comments?
I just have a question. If they are responsible to the state with the liquor license, then that makes them responsible to the state to follow through with what the guidelines are. So if we take that out of their hands and things does go on and people go to the store and get their alcohol and drink it in the parking lot or whatever, does that make the owners of that property responsible for what goes on there? If they don't sell the liquor,
They have no control.
they have no.
But they own the
But it's their
liberal,
property.
they own the land and have liability on the land. I mean, if somebody gets
But
hurt
they're
on
not
my
selling
land,
it. No, but I'm saying they're not selling it, so if someone leaves there and they didn't sell it to them, does that make the bar's not responsible if they didn't sell it?
oh, no, but if they're there on the premises, I would think if something happened, someone was hurt or someone.
Well, yeah, right on the property, but I'm just saying,
Yeah,
The other thing though is, if somebody drives up and parks in the parking lot, now they're required to come out and see every car that drives in the parking lot. They're supposed to be monitoring the manager station. I'm just saying, you're saying that that's the case, but if somebody comes in there and they've been drinking coming down the road, they sit out there, they're gonna finish their drink or whatever, are they supposed to go out there and look in every car that drives in the parking lot? I mean, I don't see how you can require them to do that.
I don't think you can.
I mean, if somebody goes out there to drink, I don't know how it would work, but I would assume they charge them another cover charge to come back in, so that they may not wanna go out there, I don't know, but that's, you know, I don't know how they could know if somebody drives in their parking lot, shuts off their lights, that they're sitting there drinking or if they had alcohol in the car.
I have another question.
Yes,
If we were to grant a liquor license from our part and pass the nudity so that they were no longer a sexual oriented business, what implications does that have for us? How does that change things?
Well, as I've said, these anti-nudity ordinances on licensed premises have been applied to existing businesses. And that's been upheld by the courts. And, you know, based on that authority, if an establishment is approved and operating, and for, you know, whatever reason, based on experience, that municipality adopts this type of an ordinance, it has been applied to existing businesses, which puts that business in the position of either changing its entertainment to a bikini type of operation or giving up its liquor license. Did I answer your question?
Not really.
I mean, I
Do I look
for-
puzzled? Well, I guess I'm looking at the implications for that as we go through all the review that we're going to do. If it's no longer a sexually oriented business, then does that just come under a different part of the ordinance to review it?
It would just be a bar with entertainment.
Which would not need a special use permit then, correct?
That's correct.
well, if that's the case, then with the zoning ordinance that we have, if this is changed, then the special use not being approved or not having any authority, then that, I guess I look at that as, wasn't that the whole reason of having it in the ordinance so that you could have more policing power on the approval of sexually orientated businesses or that type of entertainment?
Well, the ordinance is written to try to put as many restrictions on this type of business as you legally could.
So if it wasn't considered a sexually orientated business to where we would have to approve it with a special use, then we have no control.
Much less.
But I think to answer your question is that if you adopted this, then it becomes their choice on what they want to run for a business. Am I correct?
Yeah, if this were adopted, they could either choose to not be a sexually oriented business, or they could choose not to have a liquor license.
anything else from anybody?
Well, would that mean then, Jim, that, you know, we still have an adult entertainment ordinance, that an adult entertainment facility could go in someplace else that fits in the highway entertainment
there are limited areas in the township where it could be
Right.
along,
So it's still there.
Okay, and anybody else got anything? Do we want to pass or deny, or whichever, pass some kind of a motion tonight on this? I would entertain a motion if somebody,
I will go back to the establishment license and move to adopt an establishment license. A regulatory ordinance, is that what are you calling it? A regulatory ordinance for licensing the establishment.
And the employees.
No, the establishment license.
I thought you already voted not to do that though.
We didn't vote to do anything.
we didn't vote, but we talked about coming back to that because we spent all our time
Yeah.
On your liquor at this time.
Okay, go with your liquor.
And I don't care.
All right, the motion dies on the floor.
We didn't have a motion, so that's why I asked if somebody'd like to make a motion. Oh, you're?
Go ahead. No, go back to the liquor.
Anybody got anything else to say on the liquor? If not,
I would make a motion to adopt the ordinance on no liquor.
Yeah, right.
I got a motion, do I have support? I have a motion, I have support, do we have further discussion?
And we're changing what we've already had in place.
Correct. That's the motion, is to adopt the prohibiting nudity if they have a liquor license. We have 2 pages. Okay. Any further discussion? We'll do roll call. Mary?
Yes.
Susan?
Yes.
John Boyd?
Yes.
John Johnson?
No.
Phil Hanford? No. Motion carried. Now we go back to licensing.
What does that mean? What does that mean? What does that mean? Is there no alcohol now, or is there no? No alcohol. No alcohol.
Don't start anything.
That's not what it said.
Correct?
Read it again.
well, it means either that, it means that if they're sexually oriented business, they cannot have a liquor license.
Correct.
There's nudity on the premises.
Back. Way back.
One suggestion I would make is that the planning commission be directed to make changes to the zoning ordinance to be consistent.
Please be quiet.
That doesn't require that, that the process of review be held up, but it is something that should be done with the decision to adopt this ordinance.
Okay. Then how long does the review have to be held up to adopt this?
So this regulatory ordinance has been adopted tonight. We will publish a summary and it'll be effective within 30 days.
Okay. Now, back to licensing.
Yes, I would move to adopt an ordinance for the establishment license only, not the employees. Okay, go ahead.
My suggestion would be that if that's the consensus, that we be directed to change this ordinance and bring it back to you at your next meeting.
Okay.
We could try to rewrite it right here on the spot, but I think it'd probably be a better practice if if you wanna move in that direction, you direct us to do that, and then we would come back with a revised ordinance.
I don't know if there's any supporting, you can see if it, that was.
I have a motion, do we have support?
Oh, just in here.
To adopt this, but if there's no support, it just dies.
We have no support,
I'll support.
so we
They have to rewrite it.
No,
Well,
that's
that
not the
wasn't the
motion.
motion.
Oh, I guess I'm watching them again.
So is it just for the licensing of the owners?
Yes,
Nothing to do with hours of operation?
no, just the establishment.
There's no second.
That's for it.
Yeah, no, it said I did support. Your support.
Okay, would you read back the motion?
The motion was to,
Approve the licensing for the employees.
No.
no,
It's actually, I mean, for the employer.
establishment,
Establishment.
Owner?
the establishment,
The business.
which if they have more than 10% interest in the establishment. Does that make sense?
How do we know if they got 10%?
Kind of right.
Should be all owners of the 10. All owners listed on the state corporation bylaws. How do you do that?
I think, as a practical matter, it's gonna be unlikely there's gonna be less than 10% owner in a relatively small business like this.
Check to get all owners.
It could be all owners. I would probably make an exception for publicly traded businesses.
Okay, so then,
If you're gonna license the owners, then what do we have to do to license them?
Well, what you,
What's
you
gonna be
have,
required of the township to follow through with their license?
you know, unless complaints came to the township that there were violations, which would be grounds for revocation, the procedure probably would be primarily an initial background check and then an annual background check. And then the other important part is that in order to transfer the license, they would need to go through the process again.
Does that can be added to it? Or is it already?
That's already in there.
That's what I thought. Okay.
I think primarily the change would be to slice out the provisions for employee licensing, make sure we haven't left anything behind, and then you can consider the ordinance.
so then what do you want to do with the motion and support? Jim's recommending to bring it back.
Well, that's fine, but I think we need to know, I guess. We can have them bring it back, or we can vote on your motion.
We don't have the correct verbiage.
Well, you know, can we vote that it's passed upon, no, we can't do that. That, what he brings back, or?
How can they totally dissolve this motion legally and start you bringing it back? I think that's what we need.
Yeah, or Mary could offer it as a so-called friendly amendment, that the motion be to instruct us to prepare a revised ordinance that deletes the provisions for licensing of employees for consideration at a future meeting.
License of the owners.
License, to delete the
Right.
license of employees.
Okay.
And then if Susan would accept that, then I think procedurally you'd be where you need to be.
All right, any further discussion? So we have a motion, we have support. Susan, roll call.
Yes.
John Boyd?
Yes.
John Johnson?
No.
Bill Hanford, yes. Mary?
Yes.
Motion carried to have Jim make us a new ordinance. Anything else? Is there anything else left to cover tonight?
I do have a question as far as the planning commission for Jim and proceeding with this. This will change some of the things. When we have our meeting, the 6th, we'll proceed with the hearing or with this changes being made. I guess I'm just looking for some direction for the planning commission.
The way the zoning ordinance reads is that alcohol is permitted only if allowed by the MLCC. And and so it really doesn't enter into the planning commission's consideration. It's a decision that's now been made by the township board that if the premises is licensed, there can't be nudity on the premises.
So can the planning commission move ahead next week, or should they wait?
Planning commission can move ahead next week.
Okay. We have already adopted no alcohol if there's nudity. So that way, that's been adopted.
So you haven't, I'm kind of unclear here. You adopted this ordinance, right, about the nudity? In other words, you didn't ban alcohol.
Right.
No,
You adopted the ordinance that if there's alcohol, there's no nudity,
correct.
but there still could be a liquor license.
If they want to have bikinis, then they can have a liquor license.
Okay, because I was not clear, because I heard it said that there was no alcohol, and that wasn't really what was passed, right? It was passed that if there's alcohol liquor license, there's no total nudity, there's no nudity even below bikinis.
That's correct.
Okay, it was hard to, there were so many things being said, it was very unclear, I thought.
I think in that case, Jim said it would be a bar with entertainment,
Right.
not a sexually oriented business.
Okay, so planning commission can move ahead. And
No, let's see what we have. Yeah, it's still the same.
anything else? So we'll cover everything we have, yeah?
That's everything I brought with me.
Do I have, anything else on the board? If not, do I have a motion to adjourn?
No, there should be a period.
Sorry, public comment. Got ahead of myself. Got the issue, Huh?
I mean, I think if the planning commission is gonna continue with the site plan review, then being this is a public meeting and the applicant's here, I think we need to make arrangements that be prepared to come next week to the planning commission meeting, right? And if we're gonna continue on with the site plan review, I think it's, me personally, I think that the planning commission would ask that we could come visit the site, look at the building, look at the parking lot, do a tour type thing.
I think you could do it one of two ways, Eric. I think you could either have a special meeting and reconvene on the site, or you could put together a working group of people who are knowledgeable and interested and available to visit at another time.
My suggestion would be to try to do it in sub-quorum groups. We call it, if it is a meeting, and it's very difficult to control the other things that are part of the meeting, like discussions, taking minutes, and that sort of thing.
Thank you.
What has been pretty typical in customary practices is to do a site review, not a quorum at a time, one or two people, if that is acceptable, just to go and look at the facility.
That's fine, but as far as you guys are concerned, the building's not, obviously we haven't moved ahead with any alterations to the building, so if you look at it now, that's fine, but it's gonna look different than.
It would still be subject, however, to
Correct.
the building restrictions and
Correct.
so forth.
So the inside is
the way that it used to be still?
Yes.
Yes.
Somebody could be available.
Minus carpet.
I'm sorry, what? No carpet.
Mine is carpet.
But it's something that we could arrange to meet with somebody out there perhaps.
Yes.
Does that sound good to the rest of the board?
That's how we normally have done it in the past. I think it would be, like I said, three people at the max.
If they wanted, maybe, they could contact me and let me know a couple of times, and the planning commission let me know a couple of times, and we could try and just have a couple of people go when they're available. A couple of different times, just let me know what's good for them.
Well, just be advised that since the whole plan has changed here, we also have to go back and consider our alternatives.
Correct.
Sure.
Right.
And so, you know, we have to do that as well, based on this meeting here. So, you know, there are many other things that probably aren't as, how would you say, acceptable that we could do legally. And, but that was your decision. So we'll be respectful to your decision. Okay?
So we could get at least a brief walkthrough.
You can do whatever you want at that site. Well, it's open doors,
Great, thank you.
anytime.
Okay, at this time, we will entertain brief public comment. We will be limited to 1 minute tonight. We
I'm sorry, who was it, please?
Chris Hostetler?
Well,
The board, you gotta talk to the board.
Oh, no microphone.
Sorry.
hello, hello. Is it working? Hello.
You're on.
I would just like to know if these folks really believe in life after death. There is life after death.
Please, this is brief public comment. You have 1 minute to speak. Please speak your piece. It's not a question and answer.
So it's, after this, it's either heaven or hell. Hell's a long, eternity in hell is a long, long time. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you.
Ken Johnson?
Ken Johnson, I live in Stanwood, and I'm a associate chaplain at the jail, Mecosta County Jail. And I know you people have a hard job. It's not an easy decision. The law is not right. We passed a law about 50 years ago that said you could abort babies. Since we have a nation that have killed 47 million babies. The law can be misused if you don't have morality with it, if you don't have God with it. It's got to be the law under God. We all pledge to under God. We're under God. Keep that in mind. We're always under God. Thank you.
Thank you.
John May?
I am John May from Mecosta Township. We've been here 3 weeks listening. I knew the second week there was nothing we were gonna do. You didn't listen to us, and that it was gonna go through. and there was gonna be this business. But I want the people to know, there'll be people picketing that place. They'll be taking cameras and taking pictures of people going in and out. It'll be placed on the internet. That'll be legal, right? But every individual that's hurt by this adventure that you're proposing and you're voting, remember, as the other men spoke, there is a God that's going to judge us for our responsibility. You're in this position because you were probably voted here. You could be a short-term politician. And I hope you realize, fight what you can yet to fight this thing. Don't let this go through. It is not good for our township, for our county. I encourage you to fight this to all you can. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Eddie Briel?
Evening, I'm Eddie Briel, Associate Pastor, Crossroads Worship Center. You cannot do it wrong doing it God's way. It may not be right by man's way, it may not line up legal by the way of the world. But you may find yourself in a fiery furnace, you may find yourself in a lion's den. I don't know how God's going to do it. You cannot do it wrong doing it God's way. There will be a judgment on all involved here. All. There is God's judgment coming. We can't get around that. Please don't allow this in. I speak now as a pastor. There is going to be judgment. Thank you. God bless. Thank you.
Kilborn? Kilborn?
Oh, I'm a lousy speaker. I used to say this in school all the time. I never looked at it before to get up in front of people and talk.
You gotta speak into the mic. You just pull the mic down a little bit. Thank you.
But to me, this is the most disgusting thing they could do for this town. I come up in this town when I was 9 years old and been here ever since. My husband's family has been here his whole life. And it's fairly, a really nice place to live in the area. But this, when the thing goes through with this and put that thing in there, this is gonna be nothing but trouble. And if anybody's got a heart and love people and their families and whatever, if you don't have to live around, it don't bother you. But we all do. Look at all these little kids and all these families. And it's just gonna bring more trouble because regardless of what they have, they're still gonna have those tramps out there showing their stuff. It doesn't even matter about that, but all the drunks are gonna be out there. And I know they're in every other bar around. Why do we need another big one? I worked in that place for a year. And when he was hurt. And it's a nice place. I don't know why they can't bring something in that these little kids can go to, families can go to. Why does it have to be that crap?
Thank you.
And I also
Your time is up, I'm sorry, but thank you.
Josh Rowley?
Hi, Josh Rowley. I know that this is a very difficult process. I think just kind of the point that I want to just summarize is just purely that as a community, there are legal things that have been held up in court, restrictions, and I think the whole point is to try to do everything we can to not encourage these types of businesses to come in. There could be other townships that perhaps want them, but if, and Susan, I don't blame you. I wouldn't want you to have to go and have to observe that place and make sure they're obeying them. But the point is, if we put as many restrictions in as possible, not even considering just this particular applicant, but in the future, the more restrictions we put on, it'll be less attractive for them to come here. And I think that's the whole point. We want to preserve the health of this community.
That's right.
And so if we can just put as many legal restrictions as we possibly can, maybe we can't enforce all of them, but at least putting them in, they give us an opportunity to do so.
Thank you very much. else care to speak, if you bring your slip up, they're back there on the counter.
Wanda Elred.
Yes, I'm just wondering, have you checked into other townships to see what they have done to prevent this? And there again, you know, I drive by there with a bus full of kids. What am I gonna say to them when they have a flashy sign out there? You know, that's not my job to explain that to them, but I'm gonna have to say something. And, you know, why don't we look at the morals and whatnot? You know, this is a masonry. You know, it is a community that stands together, and we just want good things for our kids. They have enough negative out there with the music and the violent games and stuff. Let's just shut this down and you know, show these kids that we can stand for something good.
Right.
Thank you.
Kate Quinlan?
Hi, my name is Kate Quinlan, and I live in Deerfield Township, and I just want to thank you for the hard work that you've done, and I know this is a difficult situation, and you probably choose not to be in it, but here we are, and I just wanted to thank you for the ordinances that you have adopted to regulate this business, and I encourage you to continue to do whatever is legally possible to make this as safe as possible for all of us. And John F. Kennedy said, "Let us not seek to fix blame for the past, let us accept responsibility for the future." So we ask that you would accept responsibility and do what you can. I believe Mr. Scales said at the last meeting that you can require policing of the parking lot. And if that is legal, I urge you to do that and to make that something so that drinking can't go on in the parking lot. If you can require that, please do whatever you can to make this as safe as possible. And again, I thank you for the time and the effort that you put in. We do appreciate that, and we want this to be a place that everyone is proud of. And so, thank you.
Thank you.
Renee Jackson?
God's word instructs us to accurately handle the word of truth. God's truth is we are to abstain from wickedness and pursue righteousness. We are to abhor what is evil and cling to what is good. Every characteristic of this business is clearly defined in God's word as evil. The usury of women to falsely satisfy the lustful cravings of men is a sick and twisted perversion of how God designed men and women to complement each other in love. Crimes involving sexual violation can have lifelong devastating effects not only on the victim, but the perpetrator. And this business influences men taking positive act of improper and vile behavior. When every form of sexual temptation provided at men's fingertips is combined with a dysfunctional upbringing, which is prevalent today, it only equals disaster and sets men up for failure. Let's not assist them in falling casualty to this end. This business is an unconscionable disgrace. It is evil. Proverbs says that the feet that run to evil are an abomination to God. You can either support this abomination or you can oppose it. Please do the right thing and seek God's approval of your work by doing everything in your power to prevent and discourage this.
Thank you very much.
First, I want to thank the planning commission and the board for the work that you've done and also giving us a chance to speak. I have a clipping at home from a Grand Rapids newspaper about Gipper's Bar on Alpine. The clipping says that after closing hours, the party continues out in the parking lot. There are fights. There was a shooting. They have to have police protection out there every night. Is that what we want in this area?
Thank you.
Monty Kuzinoff.
A lot of community members have done a lot of work on this. I've heard it said several times that, where were you before? I think we probably heard that enough, to be honest. We trusted the board, and our trust is in your hands again to do the community's wishes. The information has been brought to you by Mr. Scott Burkholt, foremost attorney in the nation regarding these issues with townships and communities. He's written a licensing ordinance for us, and it's been presented to you folks. We ask that you adopt that as written, please. Thank you.
Thank you.
Trudy Rowley.
I just want to agree with those who have spoken before. I do thank you all. I know you spent a lot of hours and for this community. And you have clearly heard the wishes of the community that you represent here. And Susan, my heart goes out to you. I would not want to go in that place either. And I think you've heard from the majority of the taxpayers in this community. They do not want that here. And please, please, do the right thing by the majority of the taxpayers of this community and enact the strictest ordinances you can. Thank you.
Thank you.
Deborah Roselle.
Good evening. One of the things that nobody has brought up is that the women who are employed in sexually oriented businesses generally are at high risk themselves. I know this because I've talked to Deja Vu dancers who've been harassed, stalked, assaulted, and they do it for money, often to support children. Please don't let this community support that kind of activity. You're putting those women at high risk.
Thank you. We don't have any more. Does anybody else care to fill out a form?
No, I'm just gonna lean on a wall.
Okay.
Metal chairs are tough.
Anybody else? Okay, at this time I will close brief public comment. There's no other announcements or correspondence. Anything from any of the board members, the planning commission? Do I have a motion to adjourn? So moved by Susan, support?
Support.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passed. Meeting adjourned at